Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Mondays wherever across the country you may be. I got a ton to get to here on Monday. I am leaving for London on Wednesday. I was at the NFL draft all weekend here in Nashville. And so we did Game of Thrones live reaction show last night, but I still got a ton of things to say. So here are the topics. Here are all the things we're going to run through. Game of Thrones. I'm going to break down my biggest flaw, in my opinion, with last night's episode. What do the Kansas City Chiefs do about the Tyreek Hill mess? The Daniel Jones pick by the New York Giants and what I consider to be an insane amount of criticism surrounding it. Jeffrey Simmons, drafted by the Titans. Not going to play probably in 2019, also on tape beating up a woman. What do we think about that? Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins to the Arizona Cardinals and the Washington Redskins, respectively. What do we expect there? Donald Trump ripped for praising Nick Bosa. Why so much of that criticism was entirely illegitimate. Dabo Swinney got $93 million. And Will Wade, how many guys was LSU paying in basketball? Lots to dive into, all of those topics, a ton here. So let's get rolling, all right? And let me go ahead and start off the show by wiping out a guy on the show who was in the comments section and didn't deserve to be here. You're dead, my man. All right, let's go. Game of Thrones. The episode last night was fantastically entertaining. It was narratively a disaster. And let me explain what I mean. We see Arya Stark in that room in the castle with the Hound and Melisandre and Beric Dondarrion, or whatever the heck that guy's name is. And they are hidden there. They're unable to get out. And then we don't see Arya again until she LeBron James from the mezzanine style dunks on the Night King. I believe it is an incredible narrative flaw when you don't allow everything to be seen and or understood by the viewer. We don't know how Arya got out of that room. We don't know what she did. We don't know what her game plan was to actually get into the Night King's vicinity. So to me, that is a flaw. Now, maybe in episode 4, they're going to come back and Arya is going to take us through how she managed to kill the Night King. But it is, I think, a flaw in the narrative. Now, some people out there are saying, well, this is a show about dragons. It's about magic. It's all these. Yes, but the rules of logic have to apply. Let me give you an example. I will follow you into a magical, realistic, fantastical universe. But if Arya Stark suddenly sprouts wings and flies, then I'm going to say, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. That's a flaw of the narrative, that you had to create something that doesn't follow the narrative rules in order for it to exist. I think what's happened here is I am a big fan of Game of Thrones. I think people are upset because their pretty thing is being criticized. And you waited 18 months and there was a battle you could hardly see anything of. And, oh my God, the Night King died. And people want to say it was amazing, even though it actually wasn't. If you deconstruct this episode, it was poorly written. It was poorly plotted. The stakes ended up being relatively minimal. One of the great villains in the history of television drama went out like a bitch, and absolutely nothing was revealed about any of the characters at all during the entirety of this episode, save for potentially Tyrion and Sansa down in the crypt. So I think what was going on here was, again, it's a narrative flaw. Now, Game of Thrones has a lot of dumb fans, right? A lot of people who are like, oh, explosions, oh, fighting, oh, death, oh, decapitation. But ultimately what threads all of that together is the characters. And so I believe what has happened in Game of Thrones is the first several years were spent developing characters. The past couple of years have been about grand spectacles at the exclusion of character development. We don't see the major characters die. They're put in peril, and they find improbable ways to not get killed again and again and again. Jorah, Lyanna Mormont, Theon, and Ed are, in the grand scheme of things, not very significant to the overall show. So if you break this show down, I think the way that Arya killed the Night King was an incredible flaw. I wanted there to be a payoff that justified all my care about the Night King and his army, and the payoff wasn't there. I wanted him and Bran to have some sort of interaction. I wanted there to be a legitimate culmination, climactic moment between the Night King and Bran, which justified all the complexity, the tree, the fact that Bran has been having these visions of the past, the present, and the future. And I think what's happened is we've turned what was a great and fascinating story about power and who manages to grab it into a story of Transformers. And you have the big Michael Bay-ish inspired violent battle scenes, which, by the way, were filmed at night and you could barely see. But the actual character development has diminished. The only reason there's any validity at all to this show is because of the first several years. And so I find it to be very unfulfilling. I understand how Arya got there. She killed the man, whatever. She killed the Night King. But I didn't feel like logically we followed the steps. And we weren't able to see how she got out of that trapped room with the Hound. And by the way, I'm willing to go lots of different directions. They could have gone on the roof and the Hound could have been like, hey, here's the, we're going to catapult you in a flaming ball into the tree. We're going to get you over there before Theon is done fighting, and you're going to hide underneath the covers on Bran's legs, which don't work anymore. We are going to allow you to do any number of things. Even if she had become a White Walker, then I think that would have been an interesting and intriguing element. But as it were, it didn't work, it didn't pan out, and they didn't give us what I think they are obligated to do from a narrative perspective. For people who like story, it didn't connect and it didn't feel like they had done their work. It felt lazy, honestly. It felt incredibly lazy, like they had no idea how to wrap up the Night King story. And they're like, well, we'll just have Arya parachute in because she's an assassin and she'll kill him. And anybody who questions how she does it will just say, well, she was a trained assassin. If they had had a good payoff there with the Night King, I would have thought the episode was fine. We didn't get a good payoff. I thought it was a flaw in the narrative. And I think if you are in some way paying attention to this story, it's a flaw in Game of Thrones. And I wish it didn't exist. So that's my thoughts on last night's Game of Thrones. Let's talk about the Tyreek Hill audio. The Tyreek Hill audio came out while I was live on the radio Thursday night doing my Outkick the Coverage NFL Draft pregame special. And this was, I thought, a bombshell. The likes of the Laramie Tunsil case, the likes of the sudden uncovering of old tweets, which has become commonplace for the NFL. An 11-minute audio recording by Tyreek Hill's girlfriend, fiance, which makes it appear that she lied for him in order to avoid Tyreek Hill being charged with child abuse for breaking his 3-year-old's arm. Now, Tyreek Hill is not a standalone individual here. Previously, he was kicked out of Oklahoma State for choking this same woman, punching her in the stomach. Incredibly violent behavior. And so how do you handle this? First of all, the DA in Kansas City is on this case, and I would be surprised with this audio if he doesn't end up charging Tyreek Hill with child abuse. Why do I think that will happen? I think he will go to this to the fiance here, and he will say, hey, you're on tape lying about your response to this child abuse investigation. If you don't come clean now and tell us the truth, we're going to charge you with a crime. So I think they're going to put pressure on her, force her to come clean and tell what she knows. The difficulty of figuring out what a 3-year-old knows is always a challenge, as any of you who have ever had a 3-year-old that you've raised know. Sometimes they say all sorts of crazy and outlandish things, but he is saying, at least right now, this kid is, according to this audio recording, that daddy broke his arm. That's going to be hard to explain away. And basically, Tyreek Hill admits to punching this 3-year-old kid at a minimum. So I think what's likely to end up happening is that Tyreek Hill has to sit out this entire year, that he's put on the commissioner's exempt list, and we will see whether anybody's ever willing to bring him back into the NFL again. I think a lot of teams would say no. They would say no because this is not a first-time incident. This isn't Adrian Peterson getting charged with child abuse. This is an incident that spirals out of the last incident, and it is insanely violent to be involved in two of these incidents. One that you've already admitted to, the other one that appears like there's a lot of evidence that you did. So I think that's going to be intriguing to break down. But I think Tyreek Hill is going to be out for the Kansas City Chiefs for this year, which makes it that much more challenging for them to replace Kareem Hunt and try to find the right talent to pair with a player as good as Patrick Mahomes. So we'll see what ends up happening there. I think he's out for the year. He may be out forever. He may not come back from this. His talent is excellent, so he might be able to come back after a year's suspension, maybe after 2 years. We'll see how exactly this ends up developing, but I would be stunned at this point if he plays this year. I think he's going to be on the commissioner's exempt list, and he won't play, and I'll be surprised if anybody else is willing to sign him given the two issues that he has in his background. So that's my thoughts on Tyreek Hill. The NFL draft, first of all, was incredible in Nashville. Thanks to everybody who came out to the Downtown Sporting Club, my new bar. I met a lot of you out. We had a really good time. The bar is up and running at 411 Broadway. We opened on the Thursday of the NFL draft. Over 600,000 people came out to the draft. It was incredible. Fantastic setup by Nashville. Credit to the city leaders. Credit to the NFL. I thought ESPN and the NFL Network also did a great job on this event. Nashville, I think, auditioned in a way that at some point in time will probably end up getting a Super Bowl. That's how good things were in downtown Nashville and how well it came off. But let's go into the individual picks. Daniel Jones, to me, is one of the most criticized NFL draft picks I've ever seen, and I frankly don't get it. There are many first-round NFL quarterbacks that don't pan out. There are many that get drafted that I don't see why they got drafted where they did. Kyler Murray has played 1 year and is maybe 5'9". Dwayne Haskins has played 1 year and is not a very good athlete and is not very mobile in the pocket. Daniel Jones is the other first-round pick. I think all three of these picks have substantial flaws associated with them. But what we have learned, if anything, from the NFL draft is projecting who is going to end up a stud is almost impossible to do. Figuring out why one guy is going to end up a Hall of Famer or a Pro Bowler and another guy didn't based on their college career is insanely difficult. And so when I look at Daniel Jones, if I am a Giants fan, first of all, the Giants say that if they hadn't drafted him at 6, that they believe the Broncos were going to take him before their 17th pick and that the Redskins were. Okay, if that's true, then they needed to take him at 6. But more importantly, if the quarterback pans out, where you took him doesn't matter at all. If you are right about your quarterback, whether you drafted him at 6 or 17, people are going to think that you got a really good deal. If you are wrong about your quarterback, then whether you drafted him at 6 or 17 won't matter either. Ultimately, Dave Gettleman, the GM of the Giants, is putting his job probably on the line over how good he thinks Daniel Jones is going to be. I don't understand all of the criticism. Daniel Jones is not that much different than Mitch Trubisky, who a lot of Chicago Bear fans are very happy about. Jamarcus Russell went over number 1 overall in this league. Akili Smith was insanely high drafted in this league. Johnny Manziel, Tim Tebow. There are tons of quarterbacks in the first round. Blake Bortles, Blaine Gabbert, Jake Locker, who have all ended up being incredible busts relative to where they were drafted. And so I find it crazy that everybody's coming out and being like, oh, how in the world did you take Daniel Jones number 6? And stupidly, many people out there are saying, oh, it's because he's white. Oh, it's racist. Shut up. Just shut up. That's such a stupid argument. You got a black quarterback who went number 1 overall, and you got a black quarterback who went number 15 overall. 2/3 of the first-round picks were black. If the NFL has shown us anything at all, it's that all they care about is whether or not a guy can win. Nothing else matters. Nothing. All right? So if Daniel Jones ends up being good, then the fact that he went 6 won't matter. If Daniel Jones ends up stinking, then the fact that he might have gone 17th overall won't matter either. What matters is when you take a quarterback in the first round, whether he pans out or not, there's a lot of laziness in this analysis. And frankly, I think if your number one go-to is race, you shouldn't have a job in our industry. There are so many people whose entire basis for existing is playing the race card. And what's funny about this is people are like, oh, you play. No, I point out how stupid playing the race card is all the time. That's what I do. I point out how stupid it is. And sometimes people are like, oh, you're playing. No, I'm responding to the stupidity that's out there. And a lot of it was associated with Daniel Jones. Put it this way. If Daniel Jones were a black quarterback and everything else were the exact same about Daniel Jones, almost none of the criticism would have rained down upon him. And in fact, if you criticized Daniel Jones, then everybody would say, oh, the only reason you're criticizing him is because he's black. That's the 100% the play. So here's the truth of the matter. If you are a first-round quarterback, no matter what race you are, the pressure is insanely high on you. And what we have seen happen time after time is your race doesn't matter when it comes to your projection. If it did, then Jameis Winston, who was arrested for theft, and Jameis Winston, who may have gotten away with rape, wouldn't have gone number one overall. It's absolute insanity that people continue to play this card, and they only play it in one way. It's what's so lazy about it. I guarantee you, Daniel Jones, a black kid, nobody criticizes the Giants for taking him at 6. Nobody at all. All right, what about the Jeffrey Simmons pick? Titans drafted Jeffrey Simmons on the same day that the Tyreek Hill news breaks. And I've talked about the Jeffrey Simmons case quite a bit and written about it as well. And I am, when he went to Mississippi State at 18, video came out of him punching a woman, and Mississippi State enrolled him anyway because he was a 5-star and because his talent, Mississippi State decided, exceeded his problems. He tore his ACL in February, meaning he's going to be out for the entirety of the year, probably. And also, he's on tape beating a woman. Other than that, I love the draft pick. But in all seriousness, I do think this is a risky pick for the Titans. And the bigger issue that I have is than his past. If you think Marcus Mariota is your guy, year 5 is when you're going to decide about whether Marcus Mariota is your guy. And you go out and you draft a guy who's not going to be able to play, how are you helping him to get beyond 9-7? How are you helping him to prove that he is the quarterback of the future? To me, this is a sign that the Titans don't think they're that close to contending in the NFL if you draft a guy who's not going to be ready for another year. And that's what would bother me a little bit about this pick if I were Marcus Mariota. Now, they went and got A.J. Brown, who I think is the best wide receiver in the draft. I think if you look at what he did at Ole Miss, he led the SEC in receiving for 2 straight years. I think A.J. Brown is a complete wide receiver. I think he'll be a nice weapon to put in where he went. But I am a little bit concerned about the first-round pick because you're already planning for 2019 when you have 2020 when you have a quarterback who needs to demonstrate that he's your guy in 2019. And I thought there were guys that you could have added otherwise. All right, Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins. I don't think either's going to be that significant of a success story in year 1. First of all, I don't think that the Cardinals are very good. I don't think that Kyler Murray is very big. I'm apprehensive about his ability to run and move around in the pocket. I think he's got a lot of Johnny Manziel in him. The question is he more Johnny Manziel or is he more Russell Wilson? That's the difference between those two guys. Who knows what exactly will be the result? Dwayne Haskins, I think the Redskins are a mess. I watched Dwayne Haskins play in person once against Penn State, and what I found was he's not very athletic, and if you collapse his pocket, he panics. And so I think he's going to have a lot of trouble in the NFL in terms of going and being able to slide in the pocket and stay alive and maintain his throwing lanes. I think the fact that he's the least athletic quarterback in the draft, notwithstanding what Stephen A. Smith said when he said he was a running quarterback, you go look at his numbers. He's the only drafted quarterback who didn't break a 5.0 40. And I think his lack of athleticism is going to be an issue. If you watched Ohio State play, when they knocked him off his spot, then I think they had substantial issues with him being able to throw the ball. And so I think that's going to be a big issue in the NFL because you get knocked off your spot so often. You get knocked off your spot so often in the NFL that I'm very unclear and I remain unconvinced that Dwayne Haskins is going to be a good player. He also has only 1 year. Now, Kyler Murray's getting the best possible situation that he could have going to play for Cliff Kingsbury. He's been recruiting him since he was in high school. I think this is going to be an intriguing story to follow because it'll be a real test case for whether the NFL can evolve and start to establish these new brands of offensive play by quarterbacks. My position on it's pretty straightforward. I think ultimately the NFL is a third down passing league. As good as you are at moving around in the pocket and throwing the ball, ultimately you have to be able to drop back and make a throw on 3rd and 8. The difference between a good quarterback and a great quarterback is third down conversions in the NFL. So whether or not they run a hybrid offense or whether or not Kyler Murray puts up big numbers, ultimately this decision as to whether or not it's a good pick for the Arizona Cardinals is going to come down like every other decision for every other quarterback throughout history with how can he throw on 3rd down? Can he move the chains? On 3rd and 8, when everybody knows he's going to throw the football, can he do it? Somebody just said about Drew Lock going to the Broncos. I like Drew Lock. I think the Broncos got a really good steal on Drew Lock. I don't think there's that much that distinguishes Drew Lock from Dwayne Haskins, from Daniel Jones. In fact, I think Drew Lock is a much better athlete than Dwayne Haskins. I watched both these guys play a lot. I like Drew Lock better. Dwayne Haskins had a lot better offensive weaponry around him, but I liked Drew Lock a lot better, and I saw a substantial growth in his game from year 1 to year 2. All right, Trump. This is, to me, evidence of how unfair the media is. There are many things you can rip Donald Trump for. Donald Trump got called racist because he congratulated Nick Bosa on being drafted by the 49ers as the number 2 overall pick. For anybody who had paid attention to this story at all, the reason why he did this is pretty straightforward. Because Bosa felt compelled to say that he was not a Trump supporter and delete all political tweets in order to get drafted by the San Francisco 49ers. This is why everyone out there who tried to compare Nick Bosa, and I know there's a bunch of woke journalists out there who tried to compare Nick Bosa to Colin Kaepernick, it's insanely stupid. Anybody who said Colin Kaepernick couldn't tweet his opinions was an idiot or Instagram them. I haven't seen anybody suggest that. The difference between Nick Bosa and Colin Kaepernick is Nick Bosa has the right to tweet whatever he wants, in my opinion, and so does Colin Kaepernick. But if Nick Bosa showed up, first game for the San Francisco 49ers, and took a knee to protest gay marriage being legal during the national anthem, what do you think the response of the San Francisco 49er fan base that's been desperately defending Colin Kaepernick would be? Okay? It would be, he's not allowed to do this. We have to fine him. We have to kick him out of the league. That would, and you know what? I would say the 49ers would have the right to do that because my position is logically consistent and I follow precedent. When you are in uniform at work during the national anthem is not the time for you to advocate for any of your political beliefs, regardless of what they are. Be they left wing, be they right wing, be they libertarian. If Nick Bosa took a knee because the tax code was too onerous in the city of San Francisco, I would say the same thing. You know what? I agree with you. I've paid that 55+% tax rate in California. It is way too much. But guess what? During the national anthem isn't the time to protest the tax code. But if you decide outside of work that you want to advocate for tax reform and you want to use your social media platforms to do it, more power to you. Nobody is disputing that. That would be perfectly permissible. Oftentimes, the woke media is not very smart. That's one of the things that you learn, and I follow and try desperately to maintain precedent in my opinions, such that if you look at one, it applies regardless of the race, the gender, the ethnicity, or the religion of somebody that's involved. And that's why being trained as a lawyer matters for me, as opposed to just firing off haphazardly unbelievably dumb opinions like Soledad O'Brien did when she said, oh, Donald Trump didn't congratulate the number 1 overall pick, Kyler Murray, who was black, but he congratulated the number 2 overall pick, Nick Bosa, who was white. Well, Donald Trump just announced that he was going to give Tiger Woods the National Medal of Honor, or whatever the heck it's called. He praises people who praise him. I mean, this isn't a surprise. Donald Trump is not a white supremacist. He's a me supremacist, as in he believes he's supreme over everybody else in America. And if you are willing to give your support and fealty to Donald Trump, then he will return the shine to you. All right? It's a lot like being a rapper, where if somebody name drops you in a positive way, you're going to name drop them in a positive way. And if somebody takes a shot at you on their rap album, you're going to take a shot at them on your rap album. That's why it's so funny to me that Donald Trump is our first rapper president in both good and bad context. Yet the people who love rap music hate Donald Trump, and the people who hate rap music love Donald Trump. We got a crazy dynamic going on there. Ultimately, Donald Trump is in the diss track business. He rips everybody who goes up against him like he's an MC on a mic. And if you praise him, then he comes out and gives you positivity. This isn't complicated. Think about it. If you really think about it, he's about the bling. He's about the buildings. He's about the bitches. I mean, Donald Trump is on his third wife and brags about how attractive he is all the time and how smart he is and how much money he has and everything else. He's a quintessential rapper. He is the American dream from a rapper perspective, which is why Donald Trump himself, before he became a politician, was name-checked so often in rap songs, because he lived the bling lifestyle that was really, really a part of the underlying culture of rap. All right, Dabo Swinney gets $93 million. I think it's deserved. I ripped the decision for John Calipari to get a similar amount of money based on the relative businesses that they commanded. Dabo Swinney, 2 national championships. Much harder to win a national championship, in my opinion, in college football than it is in college basketball. And he has managed to do it at a non-traditional power. I understand Clemson people love their history, but Clemson is a non-traditional power in the context of being on this level of dominance. And the athletic program is all funded by football, not by basketball. I don't have a problem with Dabo Swinney getting the money that he did. I really don't. And the difference is the size of the relative overall businesses that they run. Dabo Swinney is either the best at what he does or the second best at what he does. And everybody out there who immediately responds with, well, why aren't they paying the college kids? Guess what? A lot of the college kids are getting paid, which brings me to my final comment here. Did you see this? Dan Wetzel in a courtroom said that on tape, Richardson says LSU, he's an assistant coach, says LSU coach Will Wade offered him a job to help with the recruitment of Naz Reid. Per Richardson, Wade said, look, there's a deal in place. I got $300,000 for him. Richardson said, I said, give me half and I'll make sure the kid goes there. Again, that's on tape. How much of a salary cap did Will Wade have at LSU? This is a different player, Naz Reid, who is going pro, I believe, right now. This is an unbelievable situation in general, and I think that Scott Woodward, who is coming in now to become the new athletic director at LSU, is going to have to fire Will Wade because of all of the ridiculousness surrounding how many players he is paying. Now, let me say this. If Will Wade is paying that much for LSU basketball players, how much is Kentucky paying? How much is Duke paying? How much is UNC paying? If $300,000 is being paid for a guy for 1 year of college basketball, how much is everybody else out there paying? Because if LSU's paying $300,000, they might be offering more money than somebody else. But my God, this is absolutely crazy, because it means there have to be other people bidding. There's no way you offer $300,000 to somebody if nobody else is offering money. You're trying to outbid everybody else. And again, this is in a court testimony on tape. Richardson says, he's an assistant coach, that LSU coach Will Wade offered him a job to help with recruitment of Naz Reid. Per Richardson, Wade said, look, there's a deal in place. I got $300,000 for him. Richardson said, I said, give me half and I'll make sure the kid goes there. Also, Christian Dawkins is on tape saying, I talked to Sean. Sean's the one that fronted that deal. And so this is a massive, massive mess for both Sean Miller and Will Wade, both of whom I think are going to lose their jobs over this mess. I appreciate all of you. My name is Clay Travis. Do this show every single day. SBAP unless you need to DBAP, or DBAP unless you need to SBAP. This is Outkick the Show. Appreciate all of you spending your Monday morning with us. I will see you guys tomorrow, and I'll see you in an hour on FS1 on Lock It In. Kisses, appreciation to all of you. Have great Mondays. See y'all. Love you. Thank you, Facebook. See y'all.